The champagne glasses clinked across the private dining room of the Belmont Grand Hotel in Austin, Texas. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over white tablecloths, and laughter echoed off marble walls as 40 guests celebrated the engagement of Derek Whitmore III and his new fiancée, a woman 20 years younger with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. But in the corner of that room, holding a silver tray of sparkling wine, stood a woman who once wore the Whitmore family ring. Her name was Elena Vasquez, and tonight, she was just the help. Elena moved between tables with practiced invisibility, the kind that service workers perfect after years of being looked through rather than looked at. Her black uniform was crisp, her hair pulled back tight, her expression professionally blank. But her hands trembled slightly each time she passed Derek's table, where he sat with his arm around his new fiancée, telling stories about their whirlwind romance in Monaco. 3 years ago, Elena had been the one sitting at that table. 3 years ago, she had believed every promise Derek made about their future together. 3 years ago, she had been young and naive enough to think that love could bridge the gap between her world and his. The Whitmore family owned half of South Texas, oil money, cattle ranches, and political connections that stretched all the way to Washington. Derek was the youngest son, the charming one, the one who collected beautiful things and discarded them when he grew bored. Elena had been one of those beautiful things. She remembered the day she told him she was pregnant, the way his face changed, the cold calculation that replaced the warmth in his eyes. Within a week, his family's lawyers had appeared with documents and threats. Within a month, she had lost everything: her apartment, her job at the design firm where Derek's mother sat on the board, and any hope of the life she had imagined. The miscarriage came 2 months later, alone in a cramped studio apartment, with no one to hold her hand. She never told Derek. By then, he had already moved on to someone new. Now, 5 years later, Elena had rebuilt herself piece by piece. She worked 3 jobs to pay for nursing school. She volunteered at the Children's Hospital on weekends. She had learned that her worth was not determined by the Whitmores of the world, but standing in this room, watching Derek celebrate his engagement with a woman who looked eerily similar to how Elena had looked at 23, all that hard-won strength felt paper-thin. "You there," Derek's mother called, snapping her fingers without looking up. "More champagne for the head table." Elena approached with her tray, keeping her eyes down. She had almost made it through the entire evening unrecognized, just another invisible servant in a room full of wealth and privilege. But then Derek looked up. Their eyes met for the first time in 5 years. Elena saw the moment of recognition flash across his face, followed by something that might have been surprise, then amusement. "Well, well," Derek said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Elena, is that really you?" The conversations at surrounding tables began to quiet. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her expression neutral. "Good evening, Mr. Whitmore. Congratulations on your engagement." Derek leaned back in his chair, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I told you that you would end up serving me eventually. Remember that? When you were making all those demands about your future?" His fiancée looked confused. His mother's face had gone rigid with displeasure at the scene her son was creating, but Derek was enjoying himself too much to care. "Tell me," he continued, "how does it feel to see what you could have had? If only you had been more accommodating." Elena's grip tightened on the tray. 5 years of healing, of therapy, of learning to love herself again. She would not let him take that from her. Not tonight. "I have everything I need, Mr. Whitmore," she said quietly, "and I hope you find whatever it is you are looking for." She turned to walk away, but Derek's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, causing the champagne glasses to wobble dangerously on the tray. "I did not dismiss you," he said, his voice carrying that edge she remembered so well, the one that always preceded his cruelest moments. The room had gone completely silent now. 40 pairs of eyes watched as Derek Whitmore held the wrist of a catering server, his face twisted with something ugly beneath the surface charm, and then the doors to the private dining room opened. The sound came first. Heavy boots on marble floors, leather creaking, the subtle clink of chains. 12 men walked into the Belmont Grand's most exclusive private dining room like they owned the place. Their leather vests bore the insignia of the Iron Guardians, one of the most respected motorcycle clubs in Texas. Their president walked at the front of the group. His name was Marcus Stone. He was 53 years old, with silver threading through his dark beard and eyes that had seen more than most people could imagine. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, built a construction company from nothing, and dedicated the last 15 years of his life to an organization that helped people who had nowhere else to turn. Marcus Stone scanned the room with the quiet authority of a man who had faced death and found it wanting. His gaze moved past the crystal chandeliers, past the shocked faces of Austin's elite, past Derek Whitmore's suddenly pale expression. And then he saw her. "Elena," Marcus said, his deep voice cutting through the silence like a blade through silk. "Your shift ended an hour ago. We have been waiting for you." Elena stared at him, her confusion evident. She had never seen this man before in her life. She had certainly never worked for the Iron Guardians. What was happening? Derek released her wrist as if it had burned him. "Who the hell are you? This is a private event." Marcus walked forward, his brothers fanning out behind him with the casual precision of men who had done this many times before. He stopped directly in front of Derek's chair, looking down at the younger man with an expression of mild curiosity. "I am the man who is going to ask you very politely to apologize to this woman," Marcus said. "And then I am going to ask you very politely to never speak to her again." Derek's father, a man who had built an empire through intimidation and backroom deals, rose from his chair. "Now listen here. Do you have any idea who we are? I will have you thrown out of here and arrested before you can start your motorcycles." Marcus did not even look at him. His eyes remained fixed on Derek. "I was not talking to you, sir. I was talking to your son, the one who just put his hands on a woman without her consent, in front of 40 witnesses." "She is a server," Derek sputtered. "She works for us tonight. I can touch her if I want." One of the bikers behind Marcus, a massive man with a shaved head and tattoos covering every visible inch of skin, took a step forward. Marcus held up a hand, and the man stopped immediately. "That is interesting logic," Marcus said calmly. "Tell me, does that logic apply to your fiancée as well? Can anyone touch her if they pay her salary?" Derek's face went red. "That is completely different." "Is it?" Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Because from where I am standing it looks exactly the same. A person's dignity does not have a price tag, Mr. Whitmore. It cannot be purchased with champagne and canapes." The tension in the room was suffocating. Derek's mother was on her phone, presumably calling security. His father was calculating his options, trying to figure out how to spin this situation to his advantage. But Derek himself was trapped. He could not back down without looking weak in front of everyone who mattered in his social circle. But he also could not escalate against a dozen men who looked like they had walked straight out of a modern western. Elena finally found her voice. "Please," she said to Marcus, "I do not want any trouble. I just want to finish my shift and go home." Marcus turned to look at her, and his expression softened. "You do not have to finish anything, Elena. Your dignity is not part of the job description, and you definitely do not have to stand here while this man tries to humiliate you for sport." "But I do not even know you," Elena whispered. Marcus smiled, and for a moment, the hardness in his face gave way to something warm and paternal. "No, you do not. But I know you. I know that you volunteer at Sacred Heart Children's Hospital every Saturday. I know that you read stories to the kids in the oncology ward. I know that you brought flowers to my granddaughter's room for 6 months, even though you did not know her name was Lily, or that she was my flesh and blood." Elena's eyes widened. Lily. The little girl with the big brown eyes who loved princess stories and insisted that Elena was secretly a fairy godmother. The little girl who had lost her hair to chemotherapy and her parents to a car accident. "Lily is your granddaughter?" Elena asked. "She is now," Marcus said. "Since her parents passed, she has been mine, and every Saturday she asks when the fairy lady is coming to visit. She means you, Elena. She always means you." Tears welled in Elena's eyes. She had never known. She had just seen a lonely little girl who needed someone to read her stories and tell her she was brave. Lily got discharged last week, Marcus continued. Complete remission. The doctors say it is a miracle. But I think the real miracle was having someone like you remind her that there was still magic in the world. He turned back to Derek, and the warmth disappeared from his face like the sun passing behind a cloud. So here is what is going to happen, Mr. Whitmore. You are going to apologize to Elena. You are going to mean it. And then you are going to let her walk out of here with her head held high, because she has more grace in her little finger than everyone in this room combined. Derek looked around for support, but found none. His father had sat back down, recognizing a losing battle when he saw one. His mother had put away her phone, perhaps realizing that any video of this confrontation would not paint the Whitmore family in a favorable light. His fiancée was staring at him with new eyes, clearly reassessing her life choices. I am sorry, Derek muttered, barely audible. Louder, Marcus said, and look at her when you say it. Derek raised his eyes to meet Elena's. I am sorry for how I treated you. Tonight and before. Elena nodded once, sharply. It was not absolution. It was not forgiveness. It was acknowledgement that he had finally been forced to say the words she had deserved 5 years ago. Thank you, she said. Not to Derek. To Marcus. Marcus extended his hand. May I walk you out, Elena? My granddaughter would never forgive me if I let anything happen to her fairy godmother. Elena took off her catering apron and folded it neatly on a nearby table. She placed her hand in Marcus's calloused palm and let him lead her toward the door. But before they left, Marcus turned back to the room one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope you remember something. Every person who serves your food, cleans your rooms, and makes your lives comfortable is someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's hero. Treat them accordingly. The 12 bikers parted like a leather-clad honor guard as Elena walked between them. She had entered this room as invisible help. She left it as someone who had finally been seen. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Elena took a deep breath, feeling like she was filling her lungs for the first time in hours. How did you know? She asked Marcus. About tonight? About this event? About any of it? Marcus smiled. Lily's nurse at the hospital is my niece. She mentioned that you had picked up an extra catering shift for some fancy party. When she told me the party was at the Belmont Grand and that the Whitmores were involved, I did some research. What that family did to you 5 years ago was not exactly a secret to people who know where to look. You researched me? I researched the man who hurt someone my granddaughter loves, Marcus corrected. There is a difference, and what I found made me sick. The way they destroyed your career, threatened you with lawyers, made you disappear from your own life. That is not how decent people behave. Elena shook her head. You did not have to do any of this. You did not have to embarrass yourself in front of all those people. Marcus laughed, and several of his brothers joined in. Embarrass ourselves? Elena, those people embarrass themselves every day just by existing. We just reminded them that not everyone can be bought or bullied. One of the bikers, the massive man with the shaved head, stepped forward. My name is Raymond, but everyone calls me Bear. I just want you to know that what you do at that hospital, it matters. My son was in that ward 3 years ago. He is healthy now, playing baseball like nothing ever happened. But I remember the people who made those dark days a little brighter. People like you. Another biker nodded. My daughter read about volunteer programs at Sacred Heart because of the stories she heard. She is in medical school now, wants to be a pediatric oncologist. One by one, the men of the Iron Guardians shared their connections to the hospital, to the community, to the invisible network of kindness that Elena had never known she was part of. We take care of our own, Marcus said simply. And you, Elena, became one of our own the moment you sat down with a scared little girl and told her that she was braver than any dragon. Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I do not know what to say. Say you will come to dinner tomorrow at the clubhouse. Lily has been practicing a song she wants to sing for you. Something from that princess movie she loves so much. She is terrible at it, honestly, but she would never forgive me if you missed it." Elena laughed through her tears. "I would not miss it for the world." Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. If you are not, take a moment to hit that subscribe button right now. Stories like Elena's, stories of ordinary people finding strength and community in unexpected places, need to be told, and we cannot keep telling them without you. The next morning, Elena woke up in her small apartment and wondered if the previous night had been a dream. But the leather jacket draped over her chair, the one Bear had insisted she wear on the ride home, proved that it had all been real. She had a shift at the hospital in 2 hours. But first, she needed coffee and time to process everything that had happened. Her phone buzzed with a text from a number she did not recognize. The message read, "Lily says good morning. She also says do not be late for dinner tonight. She is very bossy for a 7-year-old. Marcus." Elena smiled and typed back a quick response. Then she got dressed and headed to Sacred Heart Children's Hospital, where 23 kids were waiting for someone to remind them that the world still contained magic. The pediatric ward was quieter than usual when Elena arrived. Saturday mornings often were, with parents taking their healthier children home for the weekend and the staff catching up on paperwork. But the kids who remained, the ones who could not leave, who had no home to go to, who were fighting battles that no child should ever have to face, they were always happy to see Elena. She started in the playroom, where a group of 5 children were building an elaborate tower out of blocks. The oldest was 9, the youngest just 4. They all had different stories, different diagnoses, different fears. But in this room, they were just kids playing together. "Miss Elena!" The 4-year-old, a boy named Tyler with a gap-toothed smile and a feeding tube, ran toward her with his arms outstretched. Elena scooped him up and spun him around, careful not to tangle his medical equipment. "How is my favorite architect this morning? That tower is looking very impressive." "We are building a castle," Tyler explained seriously, "for the princess to live in, the princess who fights dragons." Elena set him down and examined the structure with the gravity it deserved. "This is excellent work, very sturdy foundations. I think this princess will be very safe in here." She spent the next hour reading stories, playing games, and simply being present. It was not complicated work. It did not require special skills or training. It just required showing up and seeing each child as a whole person worthy of attention and care. Around 11, Elena made her way to the room where Lily used to stay. It was empty now, the bed stripped and waiting for the next occupant. But there was a drawing taped to the window, clearly done by a child's hand. It showed a woman with dark hair standing next to a little girl, both of them wearing crowns. At the bottom, in wobbly handwriting, it read, "Fairy Godmother and Princess Lily, best friends forever." Elena touched the drawing gently, her heart full to bursting. She had never known that her small acts of kindness had meant so much. She had just done what felt right, without expectation of recognition or reward. "She asked me to leave that for you." Elena turned to find Nurse Patricia standing in the doorway. Patricia was Marcus's niece, the one who had told him about the catering shift. She was a kind woman in her 40s who had worked in pediatric oncology for 15 years.
"She said you would come looking for her, and she wanted you to know she had not forgotten you," Patricia continued. "That little girl talked about you constantly. The fairy lady who told the best stories. The fairy lady who never treated her like she was sick." "I did not know she was Marcus Stone's granddaughter," Elena said. Patricia nodded. "Most people do not. Marcus keeps his personal life very private."
But when Lily's parents died in that accident last year, he stepped up without hesitation, sold his house in Dallas, moved to Austin, restructured his entire life around that little girl. The Iron Guardians are not just a motorcycle club to him. They are a family. And now, so is Lily. "He did not have to do what he did last night," Elena said. "Confronting the Whitmores like that. He could have gotten in serious trouble." Patricia smiled. "Marcus has faced down armed insurgents in Kandahar. A room full of rich people in fancy clothes does not exactly keep him up at night. Besides, he meant what he said. You are part of his family now, whether you knew it or not. That is how the Guardians operate. Once you are in for life. Elena spent the rest of her shift thinking about what Patricia had said. Family was not something she had much experience with. Her own parents had passed when she was young, raised by a grandmother who loved her fiercely, but died during Elena's first year of college. Since then, she had been alone in the world, making her own way, trusting few people with her heart. Derek had exploited that loneliness. He had seen a young woman desperate for connection and used it to control her. When she became inconvenient, he had discarded her without a second thought. But Marcus Stone had looked at the same woman and seen something entirely different. He had seen strength, kindness, the capacity to brighten dark places and bring hope to hopeless situations. Maybe, Elena thought, it was time to let herself be seen again. That evening, she drove her aging Honda Civic through the outskirts of Austin, following the directions Marcus had texted her. The Iron Guardians clubhouse was not what she expected. Instead of a seedy bar or an industrial warehouse, she found a sprawling ranch property surrounded by oak trees and open sky. The main building looked like it might have been a farmhouse once, but it had been extensively renovated. Christmas lights twinkled on the porch even though it was September. A swing set and sandbox occupied one corner of the yard, and a dozen motorcycles were parked in neat rows beside a more conventional parking area. As Elena pulled up, a small figure burst through the front door and came running toward her car at full speed. Fairy lady, you came!" Elena barely had time to get out of the car before Lily crashed into her legs, hugging her with the ferocious intensity that only a 7-year-old can muster. "I missed you so much," Lily said, her voice muffled against Elena's hip. "Grandpa said you would come, but I was scared maybe you forgot about me because I left the hospital, and now I am not sick anymore." Elena knelt down to Lily's level, her eyes filling with tears. The little girl looked transformed. Her hair was starting to grow back in soft brown waves. Her cheeks had color. Her eyes sparkled with the mischievous energy of a healthy child. "I could never forget you, Princess," Elena said. "Not in a million years. You were always my favorite story listener." Lily beamed. "I learned a song for you, from the movie with the princess who has ice powers. Grandpa says I sing it too much, but he is just grumpy because he is old." "I heard that," Marcus called from the porch, his voice stern but his eyes twinkling. Elena stood up, keeping Lily's hand in hers, and walked toward the house. The other Guardians had gathered on the porch and in the yard, many of them with families. Children ran between legs, playing tag and screaming with laughter. Women stood in clusters, talking and laughing. The smell of barbecue drifted from somewhere behind the house. It looked like a family reunion. It felt like coming home. Marcus met her at the steps and pulled her into a gentle hug. "Welcome to chaos," he said. "Fair warning, Lily has been planning this evening for approximately 72 hours. There will be a song, a dance performance, and something she calls a special surprise. I have no idea what that means, and honestly, I am a little afraid to find out." Elena laughed. "I cannot wait." Over the next several hours, Elena experienced something she had not felt in years: unconditional acceptance. The Guardians and their families welcomed her like she had always been one of them. Bear introduced her to his wife, a tiny woman named Rosa, who ran a successful bakery in downtown Austin. Raymond showed her pictures of his son's baseball team, where he served as assistant coach. A woman named Maria, married to the club's treasurer, pressed a plate of homemade tamales into Elena's hands and insisted she eat every bite. And Lily. Lily was everywhere at once, a small tornado of energy and joy, dragging Elena from person to person, showing off her room, introducing her stuffed animals by name, and periodically bursting into off-key renditions of songs from various Disney movies. "She has been like this since she moved in with me," Marcus said, watching his granddaughter from across the room. For months at the hospital, she was so quiet, so scared. The doctors were worried about her emotional state almost as much as her physical one. But after she came home with me, after she met the club and realized she had a whole family waiting for her, something changed. "She is incredible," Elena said. "She is resilient," Marcus corrected. "Like you." Elena shook her head. I am not resilient. I am just stubborn. Same thing, mostly. Marcus handed her a cup of coffee. Can I ask you something personal? After everything you did for me last night, you can ask me anything. What really happened with the Whitmores? I read the public records, but those only tell part of the story. I want to understand what you went through, if you are willing to share. Elena was quiet for a long moment. It was not a story she told often. Most days she tried not to think about it at all. But there was something about Marcus, about this place, about the warmth surrounding her, that made her want to finally say the words out loud. I met Derek at a gallery opening in Austin, she began. I was 22, fresh out of design school, working as an assistant at a small architecture firm. He was charming, sophisticated, attentive. He made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. Love bombing, Marcus said quietly. It is a classic manipulation tactic. Elena nodded. I did not know that then. I just knew that someone was finally paying attention to me. For the first time since my grandmother died, I did not feel alone. She took a sip of coffee, gathering her thoughts. We dated for 2 years. He introduced me to his friends, took me to fancy restaurants, told me he was going to marry me someday. But there were warning signs I ignored. The way he controlled what I wore, who I talked to, where I went. The way he would go cold for days if I disagreed with him about anything. The gradual isolation from everyone who was not part of his world. And his family? His mother hated me from the start. I was not from the right background, did not have the right connections. She made that very clear at every opportunity. But Derek insisted it did not matter, that he loved me and nothing else was important. Elena's voice hardened. Until I got pregnant. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The moment I told him, everything changed. He accused me of trying to trap him, demanded I end the pregnancy, told me our relationship had been a casual arrangement that I had misunderstood. When I refused to do what he wanted, he brought in the lawyers. What did they do? Everything. They threatened to reveal embarrassing photos he had secretly taken of me. They found a way to get me fired from my job, citing fabricated performance issues. They made sure every architecture firm in Austin knew that hiring me would make them enemies of the Whitmore family. They offered me money to sign a non-disclosure agreement and disappear. Elena set down her coffee cup, her hands shaking slightly. I refused. So they made my life impossible. I lost my apartment because suddenly my landlord decided not to renew my lease. My bank accounts were frozen due to suspicious activity. My car was repossessed over payments I had definitely made. Within a month, I was homeless, jobless, and completely alone. And the pregnancy? Elena closed her eyes. I lost the baby 8 weeks in. Stress, the doctor said. My body just could not handle everything that was happening. She opened her eyes and looked directly at Marcus. I have never told anyone this before. I did not even tell Derek. By then, he had already moved on. I saw pictures of him with some model at a charity gala the week after it happened. Marcus reached out and took her hand. His grip was firm and warm. I am sorry. I am sorry that anyone had to go through what you went through. And I am sorry that the people who hurt you never faced consequences. They are too powerful, Elena said. They have lawyers, connections, money. What was I supposed to do? Take on the entire Whitmore empire by myself? You were supposed to survive, Marcus said. Which you did. And now you are not alone anymore. Before Elena could respond, Lily came bounding over, pulling a reluctant-looking bear behind her. It is time for my song, she announced. Everyone has to come to the living room, especially you, fairy lady. You have to sit in the front row because you are the guest of honor. The living room had been transformed. Someone had set up a small stage area with a microphone stand, unplugged, thankfully, and folding chairs had been arranged in rows facing it. The guardians and their families filed in, taking seats and shushing children. Lily climbed onto the stage with the supreme confidence of a child who had never experienced stage fright. She was wearing a blue dress with sparkles, clearly meant to invoke a certain ice-powered princess, and she clutched a stuffed snowman under one arm. "This song is for my fairy godmother," Lily said into the microphone, her voice projecting surprisingly well, "because she helped me be brave when I was scared, and because she is the best story reader in the whole world." What followed was objectively terrible. Lily forgot half the words, made up several new verses that had nothing to do with the original song, and finished by hitting a note that made several dogs outside start barking. It was also the most beautiful thing Elena had ever heard. When Lily finished, the room erupted in applause. The little girl took several elaborate bows, then ran off the stage and threw herself into Elena's arms. "Did you like it? Did you like it? Was it good?" "It was perfect," Elena said, hugging her tight. "Absolutely perfect." "Now it is time for the special surprise." Lily wriggled free and grabbed Elena's hand. "Come on, you have to close your eyes." Elena looked at Marcus, who shrugged with exaggerated helplessness. Clearly, even the president of the Iron Guardians was powerless against his granddaughter's enthusiasm. With her eyes closed, Elena let Lily lead her out of the living room, through what felt like a hallway, and finally outside into the cool night air. She could hear whispers and movement around her, the sound of many people trying to be quiet. "Okay," Lily said. "You can open them now." Elena opened her eyes and gasped. The backyard had been transformed into a magical landscape. String lights hung from every tree, creating a canopy of soft golden light. A table had been set with flowers and candles. And standing in a semicircle, holding lit sparklers, were all the children from the pediatric ward that Elena had visited over the years. Tyler was there, and Maria's twins, and a teenager named Jordan who had beat leukemia last spring. A banner stretched between two oak trees read, "Thank you, Fairy Godmother." Elena could not speak. She could not move. She could only stand there as tears streamed down her face, overwhelmed by the sight before her. This is your moment. If this story has touched your heart, if you have ever felt invisible and then suddenly seen, leave a comment right now saying, "Everyone deserves a fairy godmother." Leave that comment because it matters. It resonated with you. The children ran forward, surrounding Elena in a group hug that nearly knocked her off her feet. Parents followed, shaking her hand, thanking her for reading to their children, for making hospital stays bearable, for bringing light into dark places. "How did you arrange all this?" Elena asked Marcus when she finally managed to extricate herself from the crowd. "I made some calls," he said simply. "It turns out that when you spend 5 years making a difference in people's lives, those people want to say thank you. You just never gave them the chance before. I never thought it mattered that much. I was just reading stories." Marcus shook his head. "Elena, you were never just reading stories. You were showing up. Consistently, reliably, without asking for anything in return. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious? Most people talk about making a difference. You actually did it, one story at a time." The party continued late into the night. Children ran and played under the string lights. Adults gathered around a fire pit, sharing stories and laughter. Music played from speakers hidden somewhere in the trees, a mix of country and classic rock that seemed to satisfy everyone. At some point, Elena found herself sitting on a bench at the edge of the property, looking out at the stars. The sounds of the party drifted to her on the breeze, warm and inviting, but she needed a moment to process everything that had happened. She had woken up that morning in her tiny apartment, dreading another day of survival. Now she sat on a ranch surrounded by people who had chosen to make her family. "Mind if I join you?" Elena looked up to find Patricia, Marcus's niece, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Please," Elena said, scooting over to make room. Patricia handed her a cup and sat down with a sigh. "What a night, huh? That is an understatement. Can I tell you something?" Patricia asked. "Something I probably should not share, but I think you need to hear it." Elena nodded. "When Marcus came to me 3 days ago and asked about your catering shift, I was worried. I thought he was planning something dangerous, something that could get him in trouble. The Whitmores are not people you cross lightly. But he did it anyway. He did. And do you know what he said when I tried to talk him out of it? Patricia smiled at the memory. He said, "Patricia, that woman has spent 5 years being treated like she does not matter. She has watched other people get everything she deserved while she struggled just to survive. And now she is serving drinks to the man who destroyed her life, being humiliated in front of strangers, and probably thinking that this is just how the world works." Then he looked at me with those eyes of his and said, "We are going to show her that it does not have to be that way, that there are still people who stand up for each other, that she is not alone." Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I do not deserve all this." "That is exactly the problem," Patricia said gently. "You do deserve it. You have always deserved it. You just never had anyone who showed you that." She put her arm around Elena's shoulders. "But now you do. And trust me, once the guardians adopt you, there is no getting rid of them. They are like very large, very loud, very heavily tattooed golden retrievers." Elena laughed despite herself. "That is a terrifying mental image, but accurate. So here is my advice for what it is worth. Stop fighting it. Stop questioning whether you deserve happiness. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just let yourself be loved for once. Let yourself be seen. Let yourself be part of something bigger than survival. It is not that simple." "No," Patricia agreed. "It is not. But it is worth it." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars and listening to the distant sounds of laughter. And for the first time in 5 years, Elena allowed herself to imagine a future that was not just about getting through each day. 2 weeks later, Elena's life had changed in ways she could not have imagined. It started small. Rosa, Bear's wife, offered her a part-time job at the bakery while she finished nursing school. The pay was modest, but the hours were flexible, and the work environment was warm and welcoming. More importantly, it meant she could quit the catering company that had sent her to the Whitmore engagement party. Then Maria invited her to dinner. Then Jordan's parents asked if she would tutor their son in biology. Then a woman from the Guardians' Wives Club called to invite her to their monthly book discussion. One by one, doors opened that Elena had not even known existed. But it was Lily who changed everything. "Grandpa says you live alone in a small apartment," the little girl announced one Saturday afternoon at the hospital, where Elena was visiting some of the long-term patients she had grown close to. "That is true," Elena said, helping Lily arrange flowers in a vase for Tyler's room. "Grandpa says that is silly because we have lots of room at the ranch, and you could have your own room with a window that looks at the trees, and I could show you my stuffed animal collection every single day." Elena glanced at Marcus, who was standing in the doorway with an expression of carefully practiced innocence. "Did Grandpa also tell you to say all that?" "Grandpa said I should just tell the truth," Lily said seriously. "And the truth is that I want you to come live with us because then I would have a fairy godmother all the time and not just on visiting days." It was a ridiculous idea. Elena barely knew these people. Moving into the home of a motorcycle club president she had met 2 weeks ago was exactly the kind of impulsive decision that had gotten her in trouble before. But when she looked at Lily's hopeful face, at Marcus's gentle encouragement, at the future being offered to her on a silver platter, she could not find a single good reason to say no. "Let me think about it," she said. "That means yes," Lily shouted, throwing her arms around Elena's neck. "Grandpa, she said yes." "She said she would think about it," Marcus corrected, but he was smiling. "Same thing." It was not the same thing. But somehow, 3 weeks later, Elena found herself carrying boxes into a sunny bedroom at the Guardian Ranch, with Lily supervising every placement and Marcus carrying the heavy stuff with the quiet efficiency of a man who had moved plenty of things in his life. "This is the best day ever," Lily declared, bouncing on Elena's new bed. "Even better than the day I got to leave the hospital. Even better than the day Grandpa got me a puppy. Even better than Christmas." "There is a puppy?" Elena asked, slightly alarmed. "His name is Sir Barksalot, and he is very distinguished," Lily said with complete seriousness. "He will be your friend too. He is very good at sharing." As if summoned, a small golden retriever puppy came bounding into the room, jumped on the bed, and immediately began licking Elena's face with enthusiasm. "Well," Marcus said from the doorway. "Looks like you have been officially welcomed to the family." That night, after Lily had finally been convinced to go to bed, a process that took approximately 90 minutes and 3 stories, Elena sat on the porch with Marcus, watching the stars appear one by one. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything, for the party, for the job, for this room. I do not know how to repay any of it." "You do not need to repay anything. That is not how family works. But I am not your family, not really. I am just someone who read stories to your granddaughter in a hospital." Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "Elena, do you know why I started the Iron Guardians? I mean, the real reason, not the story we tell the public?" Elena shook her head. "When I came back from my 3rd tour, I was broken. Not physically, but inside. I had seen things, done things, lost friends in ways that still wake me up at night. I came home to a country that thanked me for my service and then promptly forgot I existed. I was homeless for a while, drank too much, made bad decisions. I was about 6 months from either dying on the streets or taking matters into my own hands." His voice was steady, but Elena could hear the pain beneath the words. "Then I met a man named Charlie. He was a Vietnam vet, 20 years older than me, with a motorcycle and a leather jacket, and absolutely no patience for my self-pity. He saw me sleeping under a bridge one night and he just sat down next to me. Did not say anything. Just sat there. What happened? He came back the next night. And the next. Every night for a week, he just sat with me. Finally, I asked him what he wanted, and he said, 'I want you to know that someone sees you, that you are not invisible, that your life matters, even when you cannot feel it yourself.'" Marcus smiled at the memory. Charlie became the first guardian. Then he brought in a few other veterans he knew who were struggling. Then they brought in more. And slowly, this thing that started as one old man refusing to let a stranger die alone became something bigger. A family, a purpose, a reason to keep going. What happened to Charlie? He passed 5 years ago, peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by people who loved him. At his funeral, 300 guardians showed up from all over the country. Men and women whose lives he had saved just by sitting with them in the dark. Elena understood now. She understood why Marcus had walked into that engagement party, why he had stood up for a stranger, why he had opened his home and his family to someone he barely knew. "You are paying it forward," she said. "I am paying it sideways," Marcus corrected with a slight smile. "Forward implies that the debt will ever be settled. It will not. All we can do is keep showing up for each other, keep seeing the people that the world wants to make invisible, keep building families out of broken pieces. And what happens when those broken pieces do not fit together quite right? Then we find new ways to make them fit. That is the thing about chosen family, Elena. We are not stuck with whatever shape we were born into. We get to decide who we want to be, who we want to stand with, who we want to call our own." He stood up and stretched, his joints popping in ways that spoke of too many years of hard use. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be busy. Lily has already planned approximately 17 activities for you, including something she calls a princess makeover fashion show, which I am required to attend despite my extreme reluctance." Elena laughed. "You love it." "I love her. The princess makeover fashion shows are an unfortunate side effect." But he was smiling as he said it. After Marcus went inside, Elena stayed on the porch for a while longer. The night was clear and cool, filled with the sounds of crickets and distant wind. Somewhere in the house, Sir Barks-a-Lot was dreaming, his paws twitching as he chased imaginary squirrels. For the first time in 5 years, Elena felt something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope of survival. Not the dim, distant hope that someday things might get better. But real, solid, present hope. The kind that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are supposed to be. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that Elena had never experienced before. Mornings at the bakery, learning the art of bread making from Rosa, who treated recipes like sacred texts and flour like holy ground. afternoons at nursing school, surrounded by classmates who were starting to feel like friends. Evenings at the ranch, helping Lily with homework, having dinner with whatever guardians happened to stop by, and slowly learning the names and stories of an ever-expanding family. The Whitmores, predictably, had not taken their public embarrassment lying down. Elena first learned about their response when she arrived at the bakery one morning to find two men in suits waiting outside. "Elena Vasquez?" the taller one asked, flashing a badge that could have been real or could have been ordered online. "We would like to ask you a few questions." Rosa appeared in the doorway, her arms covered in flour and her expression dangerous. "You can ask your questions during business hours with her lawyer present, or you can get the hell off my sidewalk." "Ma'am, this is official." "I do not care if it is official business of the President of the United States. You are not talking to anyone without representation. Now move along before I call actual police who actually answer to the law." The men exchanged glances and retreated to a car parked across the street, where they sat and watched the bakery for the next 3 hours before finally driving away. "What was that about?" Elena asked, her hands shaking as she measured flour. "The Whitmores," Rosa said grimly. "They do not like looking foolish, and Marcus made them look very foolish indeed. They are probably trying to dig up dirt on you, find some way to discredit your story or scare you into silence. But I have not told anyone any story. I have not even talked about what happened." Rosa smiled without humor. "That is exactly the problem. They know you could talk. They know that 40 people watched Derek Whitmore grab a woman's wrist and have to be publicly confronted about it. That kind of story, if it got to the press, would be very embarrassing for a family with political ambitions." "Political ambitions?" "Derek's older brother is planning to run for Congress next year. The family has been grooming him for politics since he was in diapers. A scandal involving the younger son mistreating women would not play well with voters." Elena sat down heavily on a stool. She had thought the confrontation at the engagement party was the end of something. Instead, it seemed to be the beginning. "What should I do? For now? Nothing. Let them watch. Let them investigate. They will not find anything, because there is nothing to find. You are not a threat to them unless they make you one." Rosa's eyes hardened. "And if they try to make you one, they will discover that the Iron Guardians do not take kindly to intimidation." Over the following weeks, the surveillance continued. Strange cars parked near the ranch. Unfamiliar faces appeared at the hospital, asking questions about Elena's volunteer work. Someone tried to access her nursing school records. Her credit was mysteriously flagged for review. It was harassment by 1,000 small cuts, too subtle to prove, too persistent to ignore. Marcus called a meeting, the main room of the clubhouse filled with guardians from across the region. Not just the local chapter, but representatives from Austin, Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. Elena sat in the corner, feeling very small and very responsible for all the trouble. "Here is what we know," Marcus said, addressing the assembled crowd. "The Whitmore family has hired a private investigation firm to dig into Elena's background. They are looking for anything they can use against her. Financial irregularities, criminal history, evidence of mental instability. So far, they have found nothing, because there is nothing to find." "Then what is the problem?" asked a woman with silver hair and tired eyes. Elena recognized her as Maria Santos, the president of the Houston chapter. "The problem is that they are not going to stop. The Whitmores have unlimited resources and wounded pride. They will keep digging until they find something, or they will manufacture something if they cannot find it." "So we make them stop," Bear said. His voice was a low rumble that seemed to shake the walls. "We cannot threaten them," Marcus said. "They are too connected, and anything we do will be used to paint us as the aggressors. We need to be smarter than that." "What about going public first?" suggested Jordan's father, a soft-spoken man named Daniel. Elena tells her story before they can spin it, gets ahead of the narrative. Marcus looked at Elena. "That is your decision to make. It would mean exposing everything. Derek, the pregnancy, how they destroyed your life. The media would be relentless. There would be no going back." Elena thought about it for a long moment. She thought about the 5 years she had spent hiding, pretending that what had happened did not matter, that she could just move on and forget. She thought about all the other women who had probably been treated the same way by Derek Whitmore, who were still hiding, still silent, still alone. "If I tell my story," she said slowly, "it has to matter. It cannot just be about revenge. It has to help someone." "What do you mean?" Elena stood up, her legs shaky but her voice steady. "I have been thinking about this ever since the engagement party. Derek is not the only man in Texas who treats women like property. The Whitmores are not the only family that uses their money to silence victims. If my story just becomes another celebrity scandal, it does not change anything. But if we use it to highlight a bigger issue, to advocate for better protections, to help other women who are going through what I went through..." She trailed off, not sure how to finish the thought. Maria Santos leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "You are talking about turning this into a platform, not just telling your story, but building something around it." "I do not know how to do that," Elena admitted. "I am just a nursing student who reads stories to sick kids. I am not an activist or a spokesperson or anything like that." "You do not have to be any of those things right now," Marcus said. "You just have to be willing to stand up and be honest about what happened to you. The rest, we can figure out together." The meeting continued for another 2 hours, with various guardians offering ideas, resources, and connections. By the end, they had the outline of a plan. Elena would tell her story to a sympathetic journalist who had covered similar issues before. The piece would focus not just on Elena's experience, but on the broader pattern of wealthy families using legal systems to silence victims. And the Iron Guardians would provide whatever support was needed to keep Elena safe through the process. It was terrifying. It was necessary. And somehow, surrounded by these people who had adopted her as their own, Elena felt ready. The article was published 6 weeks later in the Texas Monthly magazine, under the headline, "The Women the Whitmores Want You to Forget." Elena's story was the centerpiece, but the journalist had done extensive research, uncovering 3 other women who had been silenced by the Whitmore family's legal machine. Each had a similar tale: a relationship with one of the Whitmore sons, followed by threats, intimidation, and systematic destruction of their lives when they became inconvenient. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with discussions of wealthy families abusing the legal system. Other women came forward with their own stories, not just about the Whitmores, but about similar experiences with other powerful families. Legal experts weighed in on the need for reform. Politicians who had previously been allies of the Whitmores suddenly found urgent scheduling conflicts whenever they were invited to Whitmore events. Derek's older brother quietly shelved his congressional campaign plans. Derek himself was conspicuously absent from Austin society, reportedly traveling in Europe to escape the attention. The engagement to his young fiancée was called off, though no official statement was made. And in the middle of it all, Elena discovered that she had a voice. The invitations started coming in almost immediately after the article was published. Interview requests from morning shows, speaking opportunities at legal conferences, inquiries from advocacy organizations who wanted her to serve on their boards. Elena said no to most of them. She was still in nursing school, still working at the bakery, still reading stories to kids at the hospital on Saturdays. She was not ready to become a public figure, and she was not sure she ever would be. But there was one invitation she could not refuse. A woman named Sandra Chen reached out through Patricia, asking if Elena would be willing to speak to a group of young women at a community college in San Antonio. Sandra ran a program for first-generation college students, many of whom came from backgrounds of poverty and trauma. She thought Elena's story might inspire them to keep going when things got hard. Elena agreed, mostly because she could not think of a good reason not to. The day of the talk, she drove to San Antonio with Lily in the back seat, the little girl having insisted on coming along to provide moral support. Marcus followed on his motorcycle, along with Bear and 2 other guardians who seemed to appear wherever Elena went these days. The community college auditorium was small and slightly worn around the edges, filled with young women who looked at Elena with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. They had heard every motivational speech in the book. They had been told 1,000 times that they could overcome anything if they just believed in themselves. They were waiting to be disappointed again. Elena stood at the podium, her prepared notes suddenly feeling inadequate. These were not people who needed platitudes, they needed truth. So she threw away the notes and started talking. She told them about growing up without parents, about her grandmother who worked 3 jobs to give her a chance at a better life. She told them about falling in love with the wrong person, about being too desperate for connection to see the warning signs. She told them about losing everything: her job, her home, her baby, her sense of self. She told them about the years of barely surviving, of working multiple jobs just to pay for school, of feeling invisible in a world that only seemed to notice her when she was useful. And then she told them about Lily, about a little girl in a hospital bed who looked at her and saw a fairy godmother instead of a broken woman. About Marcus, who saw past her circumstances to the person she could become. About the Iron Guardians who taught her that family was not about blood, but about choice. I am not standing here to tell you that everything will work out if you just keep believing, Elena said. I am standing here to tell you that sometimes everything falls apart, and you survive anyway. Sometimes you lose everything, and you rebuild anyway. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you hurt you instead, and you learn to love yourself anyway. She looked out at the sea of young faces, many of them now wet with tears. You are not alone, she said. Even when it feels like you are the only person in the world who understands your pain, you are not alone. There are people out there who will see you, who will stand up for you, who will refuse to let you disappear. Your job is to keep going until you find them, and then your job is to be that person for someone else. The applause started slowly and built to something overwhelming. Young women rushed forward to shake her hand, to share their own stories, to thank her for being honest about the messy parts that most inspirational speakers left out. And in the back of the auditorium, Marcus stood with Lily on his shoulders, both of them beaming with pride. Afterward, in the parking lot, Lily tugged on Elena's sleeve. Fairy lady? Yes, princess? When I grow up, I want to be brave like you. Elena knelt down to Lily's level, her heart so full it hurt. When you grow up, she said, you can be anything you want. But between you and me, I think you are already pretty brave. Braver than dragons? Much braver than dragons. Lily threw her arms around Elena's neck, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. Not the Whitmores and their lawyers. Not the uncertainty of the future, not the fears that still woke Elena up at night sometimes. All that mattered was this: a little girl who had fought cancer and won. A family built from broken pieces. A love that asked for nothing in return. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is everything. On the drive back to Austin, with Lily asleep in the back seat and the Texas sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Elena thought about all the paths her life could have taken. If she had stayed silent, if she had accepted the Whitmore's money, if she had never started volunteering at the hospital, if Derek had never grabbed her wrist at that engagement party. So many moments where things could have gone differently. So many choices that led her here, to this exact point, with this exact family. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. Saved you some bread. It is the good kind. Do not tell Bear. Another text from Patricia. The hospital wants to name a program after you. Something about reading to kids. Call me tomorrow. Another from Sandra Chen. 3 of the women from today want to start a support group. They asked if you would help. No pressure. And one from an unknown number that simply read, Thank you for speaking today. I was ready to give up. Now I am not. You saved my life. Elena read that last message 3 times, her vision blurring with tears. This is what it meant to be seen. Not fame, not recognition, not applause. Just the knowledge that somewhere out there, someone was still breathing because you told them the truth about your own darkness. Marcus pulled his motorcycle alongside her car at a red light and gave her a thumbs up. She returned it, smiling through her tears. In the end, this story is not about revenge. It is not about defeating the Whitmores or exposing the powerful or winning some kind of cosmic justice. Those things happened, but they are not the point. The point is this: every person you encounter is fighting a battle you cannot see. Every server, every nurse, every stranger on the street has a story that would break your heart if you knew it. and every single one of them is worthy of dignity, of respect, of being seen. Elena spent 5 years being invisible. Then she walked into a room full of bikers, and one of them said her name. That is all it takes sometimes. Just someone willing to see you. Someone willing to stand up and say, "You matter." The Iron Guardians were not heroes because they wore leather and rode motorcycles. They were heroes because they paid attention. Because they noticed a little girl signing for help. Because they saw a woman being humiliated and refused to look away. You can be that person too. You do not need a motorcycle or a leather vest or a military background. You just need to open your eyes, to see the people around you, to say their names. That is what Elena learned. That is what she teaches now, in speaking engagements and support groups and quiet Saturday afternoons at the hospital. That is what she will keep teaching for as long as she has breath in her body. Because visibility is not a gift that comes from outside. It is a practice, a choice, a daily decision to show up and be fully present for the people in your life. 6 months after the article was published, Elena graduated from nursing school at the top of her class. The ceremony was held outdoors, on a beautiful spring day, with a light breeze carrying the scent of flowers across the campus. In the audience, taking up an entire section, were the Iron Guardians, not just the local chapter, but brothers and sisters from across Texas and beyond. They wore their leather vests proudly, drawing stares from the more traditional families in attendance. But when Elena walked across the stage to receive her diploma, they rose as one and cheered so loudly that the dean had to pause the ceremony until they finished. Lily was in the front row, waving a homemade sign that read, "My fairy godmother is a nurse now," in glittery letters. Marcus stood beside her, his tough exterior betrayed by the tears streaming down his face. After the ceremony, there was a party at the ranch, more food than anyone could possibly eat. Music and dancing and children running through the yard. The same string lights from that first party months ago, but now they felt like home rather than surprise. Elena moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and hugs, marveling at how full her life had become. The woman who had served drinks at Derek Whitmore's engagement party was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone softer, someone who finally knew her own worth. Late in the evening, she found herself on that same bench at the edge of the property, looking at the same stars. But this time, she was not alone. Lily curled up beside her, fighting sleep and losing. "Fairy lady?" the little girl murmured. "Yes, princess." "Are you happy?" Elena considered the question seriously, the way Lily deserved. "Yes," she said finally. "I am happy." "Good. I want you to always be happy. You are the best fairy godmother in the whole world, and you deserve all the happiness." "Thank you, princess. You deserve all the happiness, too." "I know," Lily said with complete confidence. "Grandpa tells me every day." Elena laughed softly and pulled the little girl closer. Above them, the stars wheeled slowly through the eternal sky. Below them, the party continued, filled with people who had chosen to love each other despite everything. This was family. This was home. This was what happened when someone finally saw you and refused to look away. If you watch this far, it is because this story reached something inside you. It is because you understand what it means to be invisible, to be overlooked, to be treated like you do not matter. And it is because you believe, like I do, that everyone deserves to be seen. Leave a comment right now saying, "I watched this far." Just those 4 words, so I can know who you are. So I can know who really connects with these stories, so we can build this community together, one viewer at a time. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button. These stories of courage, of family, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things for each other, they need to be told. But I cannot keep telling them without you. Hit the like button too. It helps more people find these stories. It helps more people feel less alone. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, someone who is struggling, someone who feels invisible, share this story with them. You never know. You might be the person who finally sees them. Because that is how it works. We save each other. One story at a time. one moment of attention at a time, one choice to show up and be present at a time. Elena found her family in the most unexpected place. You can find yours too. You just have to keep looking. You just have to keep believing. You just have to keep showing up, and remember, at any moment your life can change completely. All it takes is one person willing to stand up and say your name.